I'm in the ancient city of Ayutthaya in Thailand, and I'm surrounded by cocks. There are roosters everywhere in this temple. So my mission today is to try and find out why there are so many roosters in this place. So today I'm on a quest to learn more about this ancient city of Ayutthaya, and I start my journey here at Wat Yai Chai Mongkhon. Apparently this is very important and significant in Ayutthaya's history, so I'm going to learn a bit more about this, and that's kind of the quest of today, learn more about this ancient city, because I don't know actually very much about this city. I know that it was sacked and destroyed by a Burmese attack. I know that it was it grew to power after Sukhothai, and I think it was also after the Khmer kingdom as well. So my quest today is to learn more about this magical place, this Ayutthaya, the ancient city of Thailand. I must admit, I don't know a hell of a lot about this area. I know that Ayutthaya, its place in history was kind of ended when the Burmese attacked, and that's when the capital of Thailand, or Siam as it was known at the time, moved down to what's known as today as Bangkok. So after Ayutthaya, the capital then shifted to Thonburi side in Bangkok, and then after that it shifted the other side of the Chao River to the Rattanakosin, and that was the commencement of the Chakri dynasty, and we're living in the Chakri dynasty today. In fact, we're up to the 10th king. King Rama number 10 is on the throne currently. So I need to know a little bit more about where this place fits in history. I know prior to Ayutthaya there was the Khmer kingdom, and also before this there was the Sukhothai. So I'm trying to work out where this all fits into the picture and learn a lot more about it. Anyway, I'm in this magnificent temple here. I'll see what I can find out about this one. If you're visiting Ayutthaya, it's an example of what not to do. Don't pose as a Buddha. Don't imitate the Buddha image, so don't do this. It's very disrespectful. So I've just been studying up on this magnificent temple here, and here are a few things that I've learned about this temple. This is Wat Yai Chai Mongkhon, and in the year 1592, when King Naresuan conquered the war with the king of Aparat of Myanmar, he built this chedi as a signal of the conquest. It was not clear whether it was a new chedi or a restoration of an old one. However, it was originally named Chai Mongkhon Chedi, but the local people called it Chedi Yai, Yai meaning big in Thai. And after a time, these two names got combined, and together we have Wat Yai Chai Mongkhon. And this name actually translates to Great Monastery of Auspicious Victory. So this temple was actually abandoned after the second fall of Ayutthaya, and it remained in ruins right up until the Ratanakosin. It was then restored again during the Ratanakosin kingdom. In 1592, the Battle of Nong Sarai took place, one of the many battles between Ayutthaya and the Burmese. During the battle, Ayutthaya King Naresuan moved forward and attacked the Burmese crown prince Minchit Sra in a one-on-one combat on war elephants. King Naresuan killed the Burmese prince with his sword, and after that the Burmese army retreated. On his return to Ayutthaya, the king ordered that this chedi be built to commemorate the great victory over the Burmese. During this battle, the king and his brother, King Ekatatsarot, were separated from their armies, and this made King Naresuan quite upset. So when he actually returned to Ayutthaya, he demanded the execution of all his officers. However, that didn't happen. The Supreme Patriarch intervened and requested that the punishment be suspended, and King Naresuan agreed. I've been to a lot of temples in Thailand and Cambodia and China and Vietnam and Myanmar, and this is one here that's actually really well kept. They obviously have plenty of finance, but it's really well kept. The gardens are well kept. The relics are really in a tip-top condition. I'm really impressed with this. So if you're coming to Ayutthaya, I'd recommend this be one of your stops, if not the first stop. It's just a little bit out of town. Now, if it is your first time to a temple in Thailand, a couple of things to remember. Ladies, cover up. Don't wear anything too sexy. This is actually a temple, a place of worship, so keep that in mind when you're choosing your outfit for the day. The other thing is, wear some shoes that you can easily slip off and on, because when you enter a lot of these holy places, you're going to have to remove your shoes. Please don't imitate the Buddha when you're posing for photographs, and also you should be a bit lower. So if I was to really want to get a photo with the Buddha, my head should be lower than the Buddha. Buddha is holier than me. Don't climb all over the statues. The reason I'm saying this, I've been here for about 10 minutes and I've seen all these things happen. Yeah, this is not the place to pose for sexy photos as well. Now you're going to see during the day some of the temples where the Buddha's head's unfortunately being knocked off. Don't place your head over that and pose for a photo. That's really disrespectful. Anyway, I'm on the lookout for a reclining Buddha. I've just read that there's a big reclining Buddha here in these temple grounds, so I'm going to look for that now. The middle of the day, it's bloody hot, but also there's a lot of stairs to climb up here, and as I was climbing out the stairs, it made me think this is actually a pretty impressive monument for a big victory. Made me reflect on some of the things that I've won for victories, and the only area that's ever happened is in sports. Gotta catch my breath. And the best I've got is a couple of trophies and certificates, but this is the ultimate trophy. Winning a war over the Burmese and erecting this massive chedi for the whole of the kingdom to see is one hell of a trophy. So well done. Well done, King Naresuan. This is an impressive trophy. I found the reclining Buddha, draped in gold. Now, two things I could point out about this reclining Buddha. First of all, as with most reclining Buddhas, it's facing the east, and that's the direction of the sunrise. But also, you may notice the building. So when we tour around Ayutthaya, majority, in fact, all of the Ayutthaya ruins, you'll see foundations and walls, but no roofs. And the explanation for this is the red bricks quite strong, then they're a local product, but then there was a lot of wood used back in the Ayutthaya period, so all the roofs were made of wood, and so when the Burmese ruined or razed the city, everything was burned, so there won't be any roofs. It's just some wall remainings and foundations that you'll be seeing. So actually, when you're wandering around here, it takes a little bit of imagination. There's actually some good tools around. There's books, but there's also some AR, augmented reality scenes that you can actually scan the QR code, and it superimposes what the buildings were like back in the Ayutthaya period. So there's some good tools that help enhance your imagination. But yeah, to truly enjoy the experience around Ayutthaya, you do need to kind of put your mind back into that period and imagine what it must have been like, which I enjoy doing. So wandering around these places are just magical for me, just trying to think about what it was like back in those days. Interestingly though, most of my mind shifts towards what would I actually be? What would my role be? Would I be a slave? Would I be a monk? Would I be in the part of the army? I really don't know where I would have been placed in society back in these days. Who knows? One thing is interesting about travelling around, I've been living in Bangkok for 2 years, and during those 2 years it's been during the COVID period. So now we're kind of coming out of the COVID period, actually seeing some tourists again. So I've had Thailand to myself for 2 years basically, without any tourists, but now I've got to share it with people. Okay, I'm just leaving the main temple area, back to where all the cocks are, and just want to learn about this one last monument here. I do believe it's something to do with King Naresuan. So I'm going to wander in there and look at this monument and learn a little bit more about him. So he was the guy who won the fight against the Burmese, and that victory was recognised or celebrated by this massive Wat in the background. So let's learn a little bit more about this king. So I can't get a really good shot of King Naresuan because it's behind the glass. However, I do recognise him. I've seen his statue, his image in a lot of places, because he's the king, which I know as having the cool flat top. Anyway, so this is King Naresuan. Now he is famous because he fought a combat with the Burmese king, and it was on the back of 2 elephants, and he killed the Burmese king and won that battle. So he's well revered in Thai history. So here out the front of the King Naresuan monument are the elephants that the king rode upon when he'd had the one-on-one combat with the Burmese king, and his sword struck the Burmese king and killed him. Very impressive, these 2 elephants out the front. Google Maps, 5 stars. I've just made an entry. Wat Yai Chai Mongkhon gets a 5-star rating for me. First of all, it's really well kept. It's a magnificent temple, and it's steeped in history, and it's got a lot of cultural and its historical significance. Now, I'm about to leave here. I've learned a lot. The last question is, why are there so many roosters and cocks around? Well, the story goes that King Naresuan was actually had his own fighting cocks. He was a cockfighter, and he had some of the strongest and fiercest cocks in the land at the time. But also, more to the point, the roosters here embody or represent the spirit of King Naresuan, who himself was very strong and a cunning fighter. That explains why there's 1 million cocks, 1 million roosters in the grounds at this Wat. Anyway, time for the next temple. I am going to go to Wat Phanan Choeng, which was built in 1324, and learn a little bit more about Ayutthaya and what this Wat's all about. If you haven't had the pleasure of seeing a cockfight like I have, the first thing I'll just fill you in on, the first thing that I noticed was their talons. And the talons are really well depicted here in this temple ground, but in the real cockfights, they often strap actual knives, kind of sharpened spears to these talons. And the roosters use these to kill the opposition, and whoever dies first, the other one's the winner. So I'm just wandering around this this park here. All I keep looking at is the talons, the size of the talons and how sharp they are, and remembering back to my first cockfight. It was my first and last, by the way. I'm not really into that kind of thing. Something very therapeutic about sitting by a river, watching the locals feed the fish here, making merit, and looking at all the different boats that are here. There's a lot of big tugboats that drag the big barges up and down this Chao River. But then looking at also some of the colourful river houses that are dotted along this along the river banks. It's really wonderful place. I'm actually outside. I'm outside. What is it called? Wat Phanan Choeng, and it's an important temple because it helps place, or helps helps me understand the origin of Ayutthaya. Now, the origin of Ayutthaya, one of the most important things was about the riverways. Now, the location of this town is actually where 3 rivers meet. So this is the mighty Chao Phraya River, which leads all the way down to the Gulf of Thailand, right through Bangkok, which is where the capital is today. And it was also a very important river for trade as well. So a lot back in the heyday, back when Ayutthaya was at its peak, it was actually open to trade to some neighbouring countries and even some European countries, Middle Eastern and Chinese as well. And it was one of the few countries in this region, this Southeast Asia, which was actually open to trade. So it actually became really quite a flourishing town. And in fact, I'm just I'm close to one of the Chinese cemeteries, and it made me remember one of the stories about there was a lot of different nationalities here. It was a very cosmopolitan, multicultural city, Ayutthaya, during the peak of its powers. And in fact, different nationalities had different regions in the town, and they were governed by their own laws. So you still can see today there's signs to saying this is the Japanese district, the Chinese district as well, which are just past the Chinese cemetery, which if we've got time I'll go and have another quick look at that. But yeah, they were all in their different positions and had their different places. They were actually outside of the Ayutthaya Island. So Ayutthaya was for the Thais, the nationals, the Ayutthaya royal family. But then the outside of the island, so Ayutthaya is actually an island surrounded by water, and outside is where these other nationalities had their camps. Which also brings me to another thought, how important water was. So as you cruise around the ruins in Ayutthaya, you need to kind of imagine that there were a lot of canals and riverways and lakes, and how water was actually a really important feature, contributed to the success of Ayutthaya, much like other ancient cities like Rome, for example, or Cambodia, the Angkor Wat as well. Like the riverways and the waterways, if you could control the water flow, it seemed to bring about great wealth, and you could actually have like a flourishing city. So this was actually one of the reasons why this was contributed. The control of the water contributed to the success of Ayutthaya. So the significance of water here. There's actually where three rivers meet. So as I mentioned before, Chao Phraya was one of them. Now what are the other two? Chao Phraya, Lopburi River, and Parsak River. Back when I was growing up, we used to have coloured popcorn at birthday parties, and when I saw all that coloured stuff for sale, I thought, geez, Thais take it to the next level when it comes to birthday parties and coloured popcorn. I also started, gee, that does not look very nutritious. Now I've come to realise that it's actually used for feeding the fish and not for kiddies' birthday parties. So just a side note, so people aren't here just feeding fish, they're actually making merit. And you'll see the couple behind me, they've got a few fish that are going to be releasing back into this river as an act of making merit. So you'll see a lot, there's another example, the big boat there, making merit there. They're throwing the flowers. Yeah, so that boat there just released a lot. They've got some kind of, there's some kind of a ceremony going on this, and as you probably come to realise, I don't know a lot about these, and I'd love to learn a bit more, but they've just released a whole bunch of yellow flowers into the water, so there's some kind of a ceremony going on there as well. So you can see even today in the 2020s that the river plays a very important part in the spiritual side or the cultural side of Thais. So you can see here where the two rivers meet. This city was actually founded, strategically positioned where three rivers meet. Now you can see how where the rivers meet, how turbulent the waters are. Now this is the kind of turbulent water where one of King Rama V's wives died. It wasn't actually here, but it was in Koh Kret. And what happened, the royal boat was there and it capsized because of all the turbulent water where the two rivers met, and it capsized, and the queen, who was pregnant at the time, was on board, and so was one of her sons, and they tragically died. But what's more tragic about the story is that they could have been saved, but the laws at the time forbade any commoners from touching the royals, so therefore the bystanders and their royal aides just had to watch them drown and couldn't actually reach in and save them. So quite a tragic times. So I've just learnt that boat with all the yellow flowers was actually sprinkling ashes. So traditionally, ashes usually get stored in the temples, in the temple grounds. But what's happening is more and more popular nowadays is that once the deceased are cremated, their ashes get sprinkled here in a river. So that was a funeral ceremony that we were actually witnessing before. So I asked my good wife about this little area outside the temple here where a lot of people are feeding the fish. I said, you know, has it got some sort of spiritual or cultural significance? Hoping for some really good story. And she said, nah, they're just feeding the fish. But we don't eat these fish because these fish are too fishy. That was her assessment of this area. So I don't know, I'm none the wiser about this. Actually, I consider myself not too bad with research. I like doing research. And when I ask my wife questions about Thai culture or history, and I get certain answers, in my mind I keep thinking, should I ask her or should I just do my own research? Don't tell her that I learn a lot more about Thai society doing research rather than asking her. Oh, in case you're wondering, she is Thai. She's 100% Thai. Seems to have no idea about history and Thai culture. I think I'm starting to know more about Thai history and culture, and I've only been living here for 2 years compared to her.
เ
this little Chinese shrine by the riverside is really, really amazing. The intricate detail, the woodwork that's been carved. Just look at the dragon's head here, and then look at the phoenix that's carved into the doors here. It's just an absolutely beautiful little shrine. So this here behind me is the temple to commemorate Soi Dok Mak. Now Princess Soi Dok Mak was cremated on this very spot. Now the legend of her traces back to the time before Ayutthaya was even a city. Now Soi Dok Mak was the daughter of a Chinese emperor. Now the king that was ruling here at the time was to be married to this princess. Now the princess arrived when it was time to be married. When she arrived, the king wasn't here. So she waited and waited and waited. She waited so long until she became deeply depressed. And when he still didn't show up, she committed suicide by holding her breath. Now when the king finally did arrive and he realized what had happened, he was so grief-stricken that he built this wat. And this wat is called Wat Phanan Choeng. So Wat Phanan Choeng is we're going to visit in a moment, but this is the temple, the shrine, which is dedicated to Lady Soi Dok Mak. This is called the Chinese building. We've got some fearsome, got the dragon up the top there, as with most Chinese temples. And then in the lower floor, which we've got some footage of, in the lower floor, it is dedicated to Guanyin. So Guanyin is known to be the merciful image of her with 1,000 arms, and those 1,000 arms enables her to help thousands of people. So this temple was built for Lady Soi Dok Mak, and the statue in the top floor. So the top floor is Lady Soi Dok Mak, and down the ground level is the statue for Guanyin. I reckon if I was a Chinese emperor, I'd be the dude playing the guitar. I'd leave the fighting to some of the other people. When one comes to places like this, you just can't help but feel like that sense of peace and calm. The room, the atmosphere it creates really is, it's really special. It's really hard to describe actually, but it just feels really wonderful here. It's cool, the temperature's nice, these huge ceilings give you that kind of a feeling of uplift, looking towards the heaven. You can't help but feel a little bit contemplative. It's just a magical place, especially when you have these moments where you've kind of got the place to yourself. It's just truly spectacular. There's kind of places where I can linger for a long, long time. Not only that, but you just look, there's so many visual stimuli. You know, whether it's these amazing statues and sculptures, or it's the intricate paintings on the wall, or it's the ceilings, it's the woodwork, it's the carvings, just look how many Buddha images are carved into the wall or are in these carved out sections here. It's just amazing. And just the beautiful colours as well. This is truly a spectacular place. If you're in Thailand, this is a must-see. If you're in Ayutthaya, make sure this is on your list of places to visit. Ayutthaya is famous for the ancient ruins, and so I think a lot of people overlook this place, but it's a must-see. It's fantastic. So I've just been studying up on this temple here. This is Wat Phanan Choeng. It was built in 1324, and it was 26 years before officially the city of Ayutthaya was officially founded. So this predates the city of Ayutthaya. So the large Vihan, which houses this massive, absolutely massive 19-meter high Buddha, seated Buddha, and that the seated Buddha is called Luang Po To, or as the Thai Chinese call it Sam Pao Kong. The statue is regarded as a guardian for mariners. Prior to the destruction of Ayutthaya by the Burmese in 1767, it is said that tears flowed from the sacred eyes of this Buddha all the way down to its sacred navel. The position of the Buddha is in the subduing Mara, or otherwise known as the calling the earth to witness, and that can be recognized by the hand, the Buddha's hand that is pointing towards the earth, calling upon earth to witness. The origin of Ayutthaya has been subjected to scholarly debates. Traditional accounts hold that King Ayutthaya, the ruler of the city called Ayutthaya, moved his court here because of an epidemic that was happening in his town. So he escaped the epidemic and came here. The King Ayutthaya was a Chinese merchant who established himself at Phetchaburi before moving to Ayutthaya. King Ayutthaya, who had been a post-Angkorian ruler, moved his court to this island at the intersection of the three rivers, the Chao Phraya River, the Lopburi River, and the Pasak River, and founded Ayutthaya there in 1351. It was named Ayutthaya, named after Ayodhya, which is one of the holiest Hindu cities in India of the same name. So I think this is a very good second stop. Now we're visiting a place that predates Ayutthaya, and now I've got a bit more of an understanding of the origins of Ayutthaya city, and also learn about this fabulous temple and had a very magical time here. Okay, time for the next stop now. Looking up my map, where am I heading next? I'm looking up Google Maps now, and we're going to go to Wat Maheyong. Wonder what we're going to find there. Outside the temple, and just can't help but be impressed with these absolutely massive floorboards. Must have been huge trees, and then these pillars, which leads me to another story about how much logging occurred back in the day in Thailand, but that's off topic. Let's just appreciate the craftsmanship here for now. It's phenomenal. This is just the outside of the temple. So most temples you go to, you'll find some of the deceased, their ashes stored in significant places. In fact, I went to my mother-in-law's funeral recently and we stored her ashes in the local temple. So most temple, in the temple grounds, you'll find the remains of loved ones who have passed on. And then today we saw a new generation of sprinkling of ashes in the river, and the river is, the Chao River is just over there. So at my mother's funeral, this is the kind of place where we put her remains, and the whole family was involved in placing the ashes within the chetty and sealing it with some concrete, and then later on the plaque was positioned over her remains. So it's one of the rare vihans or ubosots which actually have all the walls intact. So most of the ruins around Ayutthaya, the walls are not intact, but this one's got all of its walls intact. It's magnificent, absolutely huge as well. This temple here is actually used for a lot of meditation retreats and special Buddhist ceremonies nowadays. But sadly, I've come on a day when it's shut. So sadly, I can't get in there, but even just from outside the fence here, outside the fence line here, I'm still pretty impressed with this Wat Maheyong. It's a huge temple. Now, just over yonder, there's a couple of other temples as well. So this is a nice, big, vast space, and it's just kind of in the rainy season at the moment. So there's a lot of overgrown grass. So I feel like a real explorer. And if I didn't have my wife and daughter and felt like I had to be like a responsible adult, I'd probably find a way to jump this fence. But I'm going to be a responsible father and set a good example and just admire the building from afar. Wat Maheyong was built as a monastery, a royal monastery. So it was built in 1438 during the reign of King Borom Mara Charit II, and it was restored in 1711 by King Taisa. But sadly it was abandoned after the Burmese sacked the place, and the roof actually collapsed, and it was just left to ruin after the Burmese razed Ayutthaya. The major buildings in the temple are its chetty, the stupa, and the ubosot. So that behind me is the ubosot. And what makes it unique is there's actually, at the base, there's 80 elephants. And interestingly enough, we're actually, if you're a tourist in Ayutthaya, the floating market, and there's some kind of an elephant camp nearby. So this is one of the elephant trekking routes. So if you're that kind of a tourist, then this is probably where you'll be plodding along, enjoying the ride on the back of an elephant. However, I don't really condone that kind of behaviour. After riding a few elephants and seeing the hoots use those sharp instruments on the skulls of the elephants, I'm not going to be doing that. But if that's your cup of tea, then knock yourself out. But as you can see here, there's the 80 elephants at the base of the ubosot and the main chetty there. So that's ubosot, and that's the main chetty there. Now, what else is significant about this place is during the Burmese War, as I'm just reading here, in 1568 to 69, the main army of King Maheyong encamped in the monastery. So this was the what you'd like to call the where the war cabinet would meet, and this is where the main army was based. And it was actually here that King Mahin, the king of Ayutthaya, presented himself to the king of Burma and retreated and gave himself up. Now, the king of Burma captured the king of Ayutthaya at the time and sent him back to Burma, but it was on his way to Burma where that king actually died. So I've just left Wat Maheyong, which was significant because that's where it really significant place when the Burmese overthrew the Ayutthaya kingdom, and where the king of the time, the king of Ayutthaya, surrendered himself. Now this temple here is just nearby. It's called, what's it called? So this here is Wat Jakrawat, Now it's just near Wat Maheyong, and it's said to have been around like before the city of Ayutthaya, so it predated Ayutthaya, but it was in use throughout the Ayutthaya kingdom period. Now, traditionally, if I saw a stupa like this, a chetty like this in any city, I'd be suitably impressed, but the thing is, you start to get the kind of stupa saturation when you're in Ayutthaya, because there's just so many of these impressive buildings, impressive structures all around the city. So I'm going to have a look at a couple en route to our next destination. So you see a lot of completely ruined Buddha images. So this one here has been destroyed and scattered. Now when the Burmese sacked the city, a lot of Buddha images were actually covered in gold, and of course that was melted down by the Burmese, but not only gold, other precious metals as well. So you'll see a lot of evidence of this, and it's just been left kind of the way it was. But sad thing is, there was kind of two waves of destruction in Ayutthaya, the old city. The one was with the Burmese, and the second one was a lot of looting. This was post Ayutthaya period as well. So a lot of looters came in, and there was a lot of treasures. So when the Burmese actually came, they destroyed, took as much as they could, melted down the gold, but they didn't get everything. So there was still a lot of precious things that were here in these temples. So looting occurred much after the time of that Burmese attack, and even up until today. It's still actually in the news a fair bit today. Some lost treasures, some lost Ayutthaya treasures that have surfaced in different parts of the world, and even some prestigious museums as well. And the debate goes on as to should these relics be returned, or how were they acquired? Were they acquired legally or illegally? Or actually, the other thing that's interesting is, are they replicas or not? Are they authentic? So the same is happening with Cambodia and some of the Khmer treasures as well. So this here is the main ubasot, and you know it's a ubasot, which is an ordination hall, because they have these semi-stones around them. So that's the difference between from what I've just learned, I'm new to Thailand, so I'm kind of learning things. These semi-stones that designate the difference between a vihan, which is a prayer hall, and an ubasot, which is an ordination hall. So as you can imagine, so these are the semi-stones that are placed around. So back when this was built, this is where the walls were, and this was the hall and the roof. So traveling around Ayutthaya, these ancient ruins, it helps to kind of have an active imagination, so you can imagine what the walls were like and what it was like back in the day when people were actually walking around here. So at the front of this ubasot was this magnificent, massive reclining Buddha. Now I'm here in the late afternoon. If we were to wait a bit longer, we could see this sun setting over in front. So it's the Buddha is watching the sun going down, which is kind of a little bit unusual for the Buddha to be facing the sunset, the west. Most commonly, as we saw in the last one, the reclining Buddha was facing the east, which is where the sun rises from. So something a little bit unique about this place. So this is Wat Lokkayasutha, which has got this amazing reclining Buddha, and it was built in the latter Ayutthaya period. So that's what the archaeological digs and the experts have told me. Well, they didn't tell me, I read about it. So this Buddha, you can imagine it's got the boundaries, but it doesn't have the semi-stone. So this was a vihan. This was actually housed back in the day in a vihan. So you can imagine the walls being up here and the wooden roof over the top. But this is actually very impressive. One of the most remarkable reclining Buddhas I've seen in my travels. I'm very impressed with this. So this is a magnificent outdoor reclining Buddha. Now on to the next stop. So we're going to end our day trip here at Wat Chaiwatthanaram, and it's supposedly one of the best places to watch the sunset, and I must admit it's pretty magical here. It's nice that everything has cooled down a bit, and watching the different colours over the sky changing colours with the silhouette of this beautiful temple here. And it's a good way to finish this video and reflect on what a remarkable day I've had touring the ancient city of Ayutthaya and learning so much about this place, this magical place. A couple of interesting things about this temple here. So you'll see these different chetties that are around the boundary, and on the front they've got stuccos that depict the life of Buddha. And it tells the story of the life of Buddha if you walk around it in a clockwise direction. Now, one of the main reasons it has these is because at the time there weren't many people, not many locals who could actually read. So this is where a lot of the Buddhist teachings took place, and they'd use these pictures to teach the Buddha's life and the Buddhist way of life. So yeah, you'll see just remnants. It's of course it's eroded over the time, but you'll see some remnants of some really remarkable stuccos, and you can just see some of the images of the Buddha and his life. Now, this big central chetty in the middle here, what's quite popular around this Ayutthaya period is that it represents Mount Meru. Now, just on the other side of the river there is actually the Queen's residence. So yeah, facing from the Queen's residence would actually be, without question, the best view of this magnificent temple and the sun setting behind. But the Queen's residence is off limits. sadly, I've been kicked out. I had visions of sitting by the banks of the river, watching this beautiful sunset, having a little cheeky beer, which I did pack in my backpack. But the dude's on his whistle. It's time to get out, and they want to go home. They want to get home and party or see their family. So sadly, I can't stay here for the duration of this magnificent sunset, but I've seen enough to be suitably impressed and to recommend that this spot is the best spot in Ayutthaya to watch the sunset. It actually maybe reminded me of one of the other magical ways you can experience Ayutthaya is by night. Sadly, it doesn't capture so well on video, so I'm not going to be focusing on that. But when you drive around Ayutthaya at night time, you'll see all these different temples and wats and lit up with some magnificent lights. So it's actually a really beautiful experience as well. So I recommend doing that in the evening as well if you get the chance. Now, archaeologists have actually found cannonballs. When they excavated this site, cannonballs were found. So the theory is that this actual site, because of its proximity to sitting right on the bank of the Chao Phraya River, was actually one of the last remaining posts where, getting kicked out, was one of the, actually like a military base where the Ayutthaya kingdom was fighting the Burmese. So the most held belief was that this is a monument to the king's mother. However, some other theories also that suggest that perhaps this was a merit-making exercise, but it's also it's a massive PR exercise for political gain, which kind of still exists a little bit today, I believe. So this site was actually only open to the public in 1992. So prior to that, so when the Burmese sacked the place, they took all the treasures and melted down the gold and precious metals and then rushed out of the place. But then there was a lot of looting occurred. But then just up until recently as well, before it was open to the public, a lot of people were selling the bricks and other treasures that they found inside, until the Thai Department of Fine Arts actually started to get involved, and they restored this site to what it is today. As you can see, there's some restoration work still going on to one of the jetties on the outside. So as the sun does vanish, and I've got time to reflect on my day, I have learned a lot about Ayutthaya and the kingdom, and actually I've learned a lot more about the multiculturalism, so the influences and styles coming from early in the Khmer, coming post-Khmer kingdom, so how the Khmer kind of kingdom really influenced a lot of the architecture here, but also about the importance of the Chao Phraya River and the trade that occurred here and how multicultural this place actually was. And fast forward a little bit into the King Taksin. King Taksin was the next king to take over after the Ayutthaya period, and he started opening up some trade with China in the new capital, which is in today's Bangkok. But then that continued in the next era, which is the Chakri dynasty with King Rama 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're opening up the world, opening up trade to not only Chinese but also to Europe as well. And how in the Bun Rak area there was different kind of nationalities. The Portuguese were there, the Burmese were there, the Vietnamese were there, and the French also. So this multiculturalism has actually been part of Thai society for a long time. Anyway, that's my little take on the place. Conclusion is Ayutthaya is a fantastic place. It's definitely well worth a visit. If you're traveling to Thailand, it's definitely well worth a visit, and I hope I've inspired some future travel, or maybe to people to travel here for the first time, or perhaps people to return if they've been here before. And what I've really tried to do as a tourist here, because I've been here a couple of times before, and I've been the tourist and I've taken a couple of photos, but I haven't really understood the place. So my quest today with this video was to actually learn a little bit more about these different significant sites and actually share what I've learned with you all. So I hope you've enjoyed the learning experience. I've definitely enjoyed learning and sharing what I've learned with you all. Anyway, thanks for watching LukeWalks.